technology.
So the United States Postal Service is looking for some new trucks. They've got these crazy trucks you've seen all over the place. It's a fleet of Grumman, custom-built, silly jobbers from 25 years ago, and they're still out there. They're still running strong, but not as strong as they were. So I propose we replace them with electric vehicles. Yes, electric vehicles. And why is that? Well, the biggest reason is the cost of gas. You see, the current fleet averages about 10 miles to the gallon. That's not very good. 10 miles to the gallon. And they can't help it. You could bring in newer, more efficient engines, but it's still stop-and-go traffic. And the newer engines are going to have more stringent climate greenhouse gas emission controls, smog restrictions. So a lot of the efficiencies are going to be lost. So the current fleet gets 10 miles to the gallon at an average of 16 miles per day, and let's just say $3.50 a gallon. That's $1,747 a year just in gas. Now, let's say you could get the new fleet up to 20 miles a gallon, which I hasten to assure you, you cannot. That's still $874 a year. Now, electric vehicles, depending which one we're talking about, are rated anywhere from 0.22 to 0.9 kilowatt hours per mile. So at commercial rates, that means something like $77 a year up to a maximum of $300 a year. So that means at its worst, an electric USPS truck would still be 64% cheaper per year. So that's at least $600 cheaper, or $8,300 over the life of the vehicle. And that's a 15-year life, but despite what they say, they don't run them 15, they run them into the ground. So let's look at what the biggest costs are of a mail truck. Well, one big cost is the engine itself. Electric motors are very cheap to build and replace. They run longer, and unlike gas engines, they don't idle, and they don't have to be started and stopped, which gas engines do not like. So replacing engines would not only be cheap, but easy, and they don't wear out as often. Transmission, electric vehicles don't have a transmission. The starter, can you imagine how beefy the starter must be on a mail truck that has to stop 30, 40, 50 times a day? There is no starter. It's either on or it's off. Oil changes, radiator flush, transmission fluid, none of these things exist on an electric car. They just don't. Brakes. Can you imagine how much brakes you burn through running stop and go all day? Well, with an electric car, every time you take your foot off the gas, it begins decelerating and regenerating power, increasing efficiency. That's why electric cars, unlike gas cars, are more efficient in the city than they are on the highway, where there's more drag. Now, the big cost, the big fear, is the battery pack. And it's a justifiable fear. The Tesla battery pack is currently about $12,000, but that gives you a range of 265 miles. This only needs 10% of that. It only needs 16 miles a day, but 26 miles would be great. So that would mean $1,200 for the battery pack. And Tesla says that would go about 10 years. But maybe it won't, and maybe we can do better than that. You could run lead acid batteries, standard car batteries, cheaply, but again, badly. You could run lithium ion, like what's in the Nissan Leaf. Over 99% of the Nissan Leaf sold still have their original battery pack. And the replacement is only about $5,000. And but it gives you a range of about 80 miles, which is pretty good. But there are alternatives. There's nickel hydrogen, there's sodium ion, there's thin film lithium, and there's also lithium titanate. Now I bring that one up because, lead acid has a problem. The voltage is kind of low for how heavy it is, and you can only get 500 to 800 cycles. That's like 2 years of use. That's not very effective. Lithium ion has the best power density, but again, you're only getting 500 to 1,000 cycles, a bit more if you pull some of the shenanigans they do with the programming. But lithium titanate, you can get over 9,000 cycles, over 20 years, 28 years, assuming 6 charges a week. The price is comparable to lithium ion, and the only reason they don't use it is because the power density is so low you could only go like 25, 30 miles. Wait a minute, that's exactly what we need. So you could buy a battery that would never, in the life of the vehicle, 20, 25, 28 years, never need to be replaced. So let's see here. You could build the vehicles with a second battery slot. So if something needs double the range, you could put in double the battery. And since these vehicles are purpose-built with a standing order of 180,000 units, there is ample room for economies of scale. You don't have to wonder if you're going to have to build 1 a week or 10 a week or 100 a week. You know what the order is. It's 60,000 a year. Could you imagine that? That's like 8,000 a week. Ugh, that's a problem, though. Ain't nobody got that kind of capacity. So, with electric, you would have a little bit of a conversion in that the post offices would need to install charging capacity. Now, you can charge, if your station only has 8 or 10 trucks, you can just charge with extension cords. But installing dedicated chargers is going to give you better rates over time. Even a commercial install of a high voltage charger, you're talking $1,000 to $2,000. And because you're charging at night, when the demand is the lowest, you should be able to get the lowest rates. Because the wind is still blowing at night. The wind plants are still churning at night. The hydro dams are still moving water at night when almost no one is using it. And the grid currently does have excess capacity, meaning there is already enough electricity to pick up the slack. We're only running at something like 44% of capacity, and we're adding new capacity every year. So if you look at your costs, imagine that. No blown head gaskets, no transmission failures, no oil changes, no radiator problems. These vehicles just make sense. And unlike a gas vehicle, which is always either revving or idling, these are either revving or recharging. It just makes sense. I say they could likely knock $10,000 to $18,000 off the cost of it just in fuel savings, but more likely the whole damn thing is free when you consider how low the maintenance is. Any electric motor can replace any other electric motor. It just has to have the same mountings. They're not hard to make, they're quite easy, and they last a long time. I'm interrupting this broadcast to bring you updated facts that I found during post-production when I put all the graphics on the podcast. For the 2014 and 15 electric vehicle mass production specs, cars are using 0.25 to 0.55 kilowatt hours per mile. So at an industrial average, if you look, the industrial average is 6.67 cents nationwide. That would be, for one USPS truck, that would be $83 to $183 per year for the truck for the whole year. Con Edison in New York has a promo going, a special program, because nighttime usage is so low and daytime usage is so high. They're selling nighttime electricity at 1.34 cents per kilowatt hour. That's midnight to 8 a.m. So that would mean your USPS, your mail truck, would use $17 a year, up to $37 a year. Forget gas. That's one tank of gas, and you've got a whole year for your mail truck. Now, let's see. Versus gas. What would gas cost? Well, at 10 miles a gallon, the current fleet rate, that would be $1,200 to $1,700 per year. And even with the very best case scenario of future, of whatever the next fleet is, even if they can get it up to 20 miles a gallon, which again, they cannot, we're still talking $624 to $874 a year versus 17. The worst case electric on any of the stuff I could find was 59 cents a day. And the best case scenario on any gas engine I could find was $2 a day. So Nevada offers 4.6 cents for their overnight charging. That'd be $79 a year. Con Ed, like I said, $23 a year. In Texas, the utility TXU is currently offering $0.00 for overnight electricity, meaning you could charge the fleet for free. Even Portland offers 4.2 cents for their overnight rate. So that means on these trucks, you could save realistically $1,000 a year in fuel costs. $1,000 a year. Not to mention you get something that runs longer, runs better, runs cheaper, fewer moving parts. An electrical engine has how many moving parts again? One. It just makes sense. So I'm going to cut back and just cap it off with the regularly scheduled broadcast. Guys, listen. United States Postal Service, Postmaster General, I'm talking to you directly. I have spent 2 darn weeks working on this ridiculous research project, and I assure you, this is the way to go. We are standing at a crossroads in American history, in world history, nay, in the history of the solar system. Don't let this be your Pluto moment. Come on. Don't be the Postmaster General. Be the Postmaster Specific. That's my advice. I offer it for free.